Don't be afraid. Hold on. You'll find your way.
Welcome to Growth Made Groovy, where we talk about everything from healing medicine music, working through life challenges,
and developing awareness and connections as we heal and grow along our journey.
Hey everybody, I'm Noel New.
And I'm Caroline Rena, and welcome to Growth Made Groovy.
Yes, and together we are in Divinity Productions, and this is our podcast, or group cast, if you will, called A Growth Made Groovy. And in it, we talk about everything about healing and just kind of going through stuff and where we've come from and where we're at to where we're going, and bringing music along the way, and what we've been doing the last several weeks. And we're continuing today is going through our song catalog. And when we wrote it, these songs that we've been going through have been written a couple of years ago now, 2019. And the one we have for today is called One of a Kind, which was actually the name of our EP that we did in good old Lake Worth, Florida, with our dear friend Rick Pattison at the Shed Studios, who, by the way, is now... By the way, he's now in North Carolina, Cary, North Carolina, and so he's moved his facilities northward.
And life.
That's right. He moved his whole life northward. That's right.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So what date? Do you have the date? Because I don't have my book when it was written, when we wrote that.
No, it's April.
Still
something.
in April?
Yeah, April something.
Do we write
and
that?
By the way, we wrote this with Irvin Arthur. So this one,
another one.
Yeah, we were at where you were staying at Barbara's house, and Irvin was there. And so we wrote two in a row. We wrote the last week's one, Where I've Been, and then we wrote this one, One of a Kind. He doesn't sing on this one or participate, but he definitely added his songwriting prowess to the mix.
I think what he did for me was he guided this song. He was such an incredible guidance to move the wording, the words and the feel, that type of thing. And added words to it as well. But just the guidance that he gave us, because we were in kind of an interesting spot at that time. So, trying to figure things out and what direction and everything. So that we were going together, separately, whatever that was. I don't even know anymore, but we were having an awfully good time doing the music and laughing a lot and just, it was just a crack up. I loved that point as we were doing that. So I just wanted to share that because that was huge,
Yeah. And from what I remember, the key part for this for me was all the songs we'd written up to this point were more fast paced, more kind of old kind of rock and roll, folk rock and roll style. And this was our first slow one. You'd been really wanting a slow song. And so I had just come up with some of these chords and then, the words came through. So without further ado, let's go ahead and put this one on. And this is another one where Caroline made a new video for a new updated with
new and improved
recent pictures here. Yeah. Let's go ahead and hit play here, open.
It might be loud, Noel, so you might have to turn it down a little bit.
Yeah, let me know, because that's what I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Right now it's doing its thing. For some reason it's having some, there we go.
It's all choked up.
It is all choked up. It was all primed and ready. I've been taking good care to make these primed and ready, but hey, it's part of doing it live on tape,
Live on tape. Yep.
All right, here we go. One
live,
of a
not
kind.
live.
Yes. I didn't notice I had it on. till I was shown it, getting up from a fall. Something about this created a wall that I learned to harness so I wouldn't feel small. Midnight awakening, thoughts of my mind stir up the stillness, one of a kind, holding the moment it's safe to let go, growing in love with the rush that is you, loving and learning, there's nothing to lose, longing to hold you, my heart feels the pull. Under the loneliness, right at the soul, there lies the comfort, true love at its own, making the memories, the feeling of home, holding a part of me never alone. Midnight awakening to thoughts of my mind, they stir up the stillness, you're one of a kind, holding the moment it's safe to let go, growing in love with the rush that is you, loving and learning, there's nothing to lose, longing to hold you, my heart feels the pull. Holding the moment is safe to let go, growing in love with the rush that is you, loving and learning, there's nothing to lose, longing to hold you, my heart feels the pull. My heart feels full. Holding the moment. My heart feels full. Growing in love. My heart feels full. Longing to hold you. My heart feels full. All right.
Wow. All right. There's something seriously, like if I had listened to that and watched it about 5 months ago,
Right.
I feel different watching it. It's interesting because it's just hitting me crap in front of everybody.
That's right.
I'm going to do that a lot until I stop, so
Well, I mean,
I teared up.
yeah, it's an emotional song. I mean, it's a love song. So, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, again, in the vein that we were writing, and still kind of do, it's really connecting with self. Um, but it's also the other. And actually, one of his key contributions, I remember, is the line where he says, growing in love with the rush that is you. And, he put the word you in there, because it was just, there's still, that was, the vulnerability to go from the self to the you. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that line kind of, for me, was like this turning point, like what's happening, what's going on. That's where everything started kind of like my brain. When he said that line, I was like, because we were having, I'm going to be honest here, whether you do it or not, I'm going to do it. Like I wasn't interested or ready or whatever for any kind of a relationship. I didn't, and the music was like really, really powerful, and the laughing and the enjoying, so it all kind of started, when he said that, it's like, that's kind of like what it felt like in that moment. And especially looking back and at the words and looking at you talking about this right now, it's like, it started an interesting, a beautifully healing, growth, interesting trajectory for both of us, because neither one of us really had a clue what was going on in that moment, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of sort of thought, and then we didn't, and then we did, and then resisted, of course. Resistance is a really good word for both of us. And that's kind of where I come from with it. So I just wanted to be open and share that. Being vulnerable.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's it's a vulnerable song. You know what I mean? Opens up, and the musicianship, the whole thing, the musicality of it, everything is very vulnerable. The way that we sing it. It's a lovely song. It's a lovely tune.
A lovely song. Yeah, and that probably brings in, because I've always wondered, even from my perspective, because you wrote that first verse, and in being vulnerable right now, as much as you choose to be or whatever, what did that first verse for you? I mean, if you read it and then kind of talk about it, because I mean, I know you, but I didn't know you that closely as to why you wrote those words. I didn't notice I had it all until I was shown it getting it from the fall. Something about this created a wall that I learned to harness so I wouldn't feel small. I never really knew, I mean,
it's a story. That was the story of my life. I mean, to some aspects it's still there, but I mean, that was how I always, it's interesting. The second song I ever wrote back in 1993, there was a same kind of wording. Here it was, what was this, 2019, 6 years later, and but it was different. I was literally in the middle of it back then. Even I was 23, so I was in the middle of it back then, and here, after, at that point, 20 something years of working on myself, it was more of a kind of report from where I've been, but it still is, to some degree.
Well, that's the name of the last song we talked about, isn't it? Where I've been.
Yeah, where I've been. But I mean, yeah. So again, I think that the words back in 93 were, do you know the way to go? With the sirens running in your head, the lights are all turning red. The path that lies ahead of you is the one that you've been on. So keep your mind at ease and just keep moving forward. I can't remember it, but it was something like that. So this is what this is. I didn't notice I had it all, which is within myself and the life that I'm living, until I was shown it getting up from a fall. Every time we hit a bottom and come back and learn, that's when we're kind of shown what this life really is and who we truly are. And something about this had created a wall. That's, the word had created a wall that I learned to harness so I wouldn't feel small. And that was my biggest thing, is always feeling so small and thinking and believing that I was, both physically and internally.
Yeah. And that's what we obviously walk through a lot, and we don't need to get into all that deep stuff, because that's not what this is about. But there's a piece of that that's like the wall that gets placed in front of us to protect ourselves. I mean, when we feel small, and most of us do feel small, because we get trained, I think, to feel that way. And I, like even today I wrote in a blog, it's like, don't try to squeeze yourself into a box to feel small just because that's what you think everybody, wants you to be or tells you are, or whatever, because you are way bigger than that. You're an infinite being that's expansive. You can't fit in that box. That box doesn't even exist for you.
Well, and then when there's challenges of the third dimensional of life, this physical being, a being here, and the egoic mind that connects to it, which is our mind state. What happens is, so I was small. I was a small boy and then a small man, meaning not small, but short. And so I was, constantly making like it didn't matter, and it did, and then it did matter, and then it didn't, and all that kind of stuff. And then, seeing society's dictates on what that means to be a short human being, but especially a short man. So so I had that, gift given to me, not just from my own low sense of self of small and being, of the infinite in this finite, place, but actually in the finite place being quote unquote small. So so that was my biggest, challenge to walk through, that I, again, so I said, I learned to harness, created a wall. I learned to harness so I wouldn't feel small. So I created that and all the different mechanisms that come along with it, so that I didn't, wasn't
adaptations,
vulnerable. Yeah, there you go. I wasn't vulnerable to the criticism and the judgment, because I was already having such extraordinary, extreme criticism and judgment of self, which is what most of us do. And then, the inner critic. And then, so it's interesting. It's all connected, but, it's still, pieces of it can still inflict today. But it's just a matter of just, honoring that, honoring that which is small, you know what I mean? Honoring that which is, it's not always about, overcoming and looking at the bright side and the good side. It's just honoring when you feel like, a small being, and that's okay. Cause in the honoring is the infinite, which is the vast, large, beautiful.
That's where the awareness comes, that you realize that, or not you, but for me, I realized that I'm not as small as I thought I was. The infinite is always there. Our higher self is that infinite being. That's right. That is big. It's expansive. And we, it's like being able to walk through that. And as long, and who I am with people is recognizing what their potential is, and seeing things in other people where sometimes they don't see it in themselves. And it was like with you, I caught that pretty early on, especially, in this. So I just wanted to hear what your perspective was, because I knew you were bigger than what you thought you were. Even when we met, even after all the work you've always done, and it was like, come on, and it's hard. You have to meet people where they're at. You can't force them to, heal like a dog, heal. It doesn't work that way. And it's being able to accept and meet people where they're at and walk with them and walk through that, because, in a more intimate relationship or friendship or whatever, sometimes the bigger stuff comes out and then your stuff gets triggered. So it's hard to manipulate both of them at the same time. So even as you see, like for me, seeing what or feeling what you felt, because sometimes I felt it without you even saying anything, hit my feelings of feeling small. and then I didn't know what the heck to do with it. And then, so that's kind of the beginning of, the challenge of being in a close relationship with somebody, so that's where I wanted to know what you were thinking most of the time, all the time, in order for me to understand you and me. That's just how I function. It helps me to understand both of us, and
Right.
it was very powerful. And now it's different because we're at such a different space now than we were back then when this was written. Like, it was a whole other lifetime ago, it feels like it at this point, kind of.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. So, and guess what? I have to say this. When I was little, my uncle always said, well, two things. Whenever you're little and you feel small, just sit on a tack and up you'll go. That was his thing. So bigger, you have to sit on a tack though. And the other one was always back in the day, and I don't know if they still say that or not, but it's in my head. Best things come in small packages. So I had to throw that one in, but anyway.
Turn it in. That's right. Turn
it in.
All right. And so the pre-chorus, midnight awaking to thoughts of my mind. You stir up the stillness. You're one of a kind. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I remember I did this a little bit. I think you did it more, and I don't think we were in a space to even know this. I think this was pre-knowledge. Really, it was weird because midnight awaking is something I remember you telling me you did all the time, or I've done it before. We wake up in the middle of the night and you're always thinking, your brain's going. And I stopped. I did that for a long time, but I stopped. But I think I remember you saying that to me, and you had done it for a long time. And I don't know, I think you still do it, but not quite in the same way. And it's when our brain, it's like the thoughts in our mind just keep rambling and rotating and constantly. I call it monkey mind. And we can't sleep, and we can't, it really doesn't help us to think because we're not really thinking about things that are really necessary or worth it, and we put ourselves in this like little tangent where what we think actually becomes who we are. And so it's, for me, that stirs up, we have stillness inside of us. When we stop doing that, we can get to that stillness. And then the you're one of a kind, see, that part of it kind of went like you talk about with the other, and then remembering self as one of a kind, because none of us are the same. None of us are made up the same. None of us do things the same. None of us think the same. Just because we're kind of forced into the box to do that doesn't mean we're good at it, that we're meant to do it. And so we're all one of a kind. We're all special. We all matter. We all have that, so that's kind of where all that, and that's linking up with me today. Cause that was part of my blog, where we are individual, we are special, we are, whether you think that or not, that's what we are as our higher self, is one of a kind, like a snowflake.
Yeah. Or a thumbprint. It's all different.
Or a thumbprint. Everybody's got a different. Yep.
That's right.
So, you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I still do that. I wake up in the middle of the night, but it's not every night, but most nights. And, but I used it as a welcome call, so that I can go beyond, beyond the mind into the infinite with different meditative practices. But yeah, that's right. So a midnight awakening, the thoughts of my mind, because that's what stirs most people awake, and most people that I've connected with over the last 20 something years, both professionally and personally. You stir up the stillness, you're one of a kind. And again, yeah, that is going within the self and in the other, in that connection with the other, and that vulnerable state of being in love, and to say that, I'm in love, has a connotation of our history, in our music and our movies and our musicals and plays, and, back to Shakespeare, back to, the Iliad, Homer, back in Greek, Oedipus, whatever. the whole point of all these different things is the in love is really kind of drawn into this external thing. In love is just being in the state of love. And so when we're in the state of love through ourselves and another or others or others, but especially, there is that one connection with one other that can make it very empowering and connecting. And, and then that person, whomever that person is one of a kind in that state of being in love with that person. You know what I mean? And so, that's where a lot of the trickiness comes in for most of us. But to be in love with somebody is not about attaching. It's just about being in that state of love with that person. However, there is a uniqueness that comes not just with self, it comes with the other and the bond that you have with them. And I think that's part of this song too.
And because we do this music or we've done this music at 432 hertz or 444 hertz, love actually happens to be the highest vibration. So it's about the vibration of love and how we meet each other at that high vibration, not whatever this is, whatever happens in, because of my conditioning, your conditioning, our conditioning together, whatever that is. That's not what love is. That's something else. We want it to be that because most of us want to give and receive love. It doesn't always look like that because of our conditioning. And sometimes it's hard to see it. And sometimes we're in it. So, like at the beginning of a relationship, it's like,
yeah, it's called limerence, but yeah, right.
Yeah. If you can sustain that by having done the work and healed yourself and sustain that level of, vibration, that's what's meant to be heaven on earth. That's the avatars. That's that, you look at somebody like Mother Teresa or Jesus or whatever avatar you believe in, and that's what you're feeling. You're feeling their vibration of love, and that's what feels good. It's not what they're saying, not what they're doing, not da 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 da. It's that vibration that they put out. They're like a lighthouse, and they draw you to them. And I think that that's what happens when you fall in love with somebody is you're being that lighthouse and you're drawing that other person in that moment until the conditioning starts, until the conditioning work starts. And then it's like, wah!
Yeah.
Which
and
is
that's
the fun
what
part.
Most of us get to learn from that experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, all right. So, the chorus is pretty self-explanatory as far as it gets more vulnerable. Holding the moment, it's safe to let go in the moment. Mm-hmm. Holding in the moment, safe to let go. Growing in love with the rush that is you, and that's that energy of that newly connection. Loving and learning, there's nothing to lose. It's really nothing to lose. There's no way you could lose love. It just is. And whatever we learn, we gain more knowledge plus experience as wisdom. And longing to hold you, my heart feels the pull. And so that you is the other self, is the energy of the highest self, longing to hold you, my heart feels the pull. And so again, those four lines are just that state of being in love and the vulnerability that is created. However, with the vulnerability is the ultimate power, the empowerment of the vulnerability.
And I see that chorus as also not just the you as in you, the other person. I also now see it as in me.
Yeah, sure.
Falling in love with me, and that you, the rush that is you, is actually my little girl, my higher self, my teenage girl. That's the part that, the growth happens in loving that part of you, me, us individually by ourselves, within ourselves, in that self-love too.
Yes. Which again, always is, it's the underlying undercurrent in all the music, all the lyrics that we do anyways.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then the second verse is, you can go through that.
Okay. Under the loneliness, right at the soul, there lies the comfort, true love at its own, making the memories, the feeling of home, holding a part of me that's never alone. So for me, no matter who I've ever had around me, I had always felt lonely. It really didn't matter because I could not be with myself And a lot of people are like that. There's loneliness in the fact that you think you're supposed to be with somebody else. And we're taught that. And being alone is actually okay, but it doesn't feel good when we don't understand it. So it can be very lonely, especially when you're going through the healing journey. And sometimes you have to be alone to do that, and it's at the soul level to me, because that's where our higher self is bringing us to. And that's what that true love that I was mentioning a little while ago, there's the truth of love, of truth of yourself, of connecting with self, of loving self, and knowing self at a deep, deep, deep level. And then making the memories, the feeling of home. So, to be honest with you, I don't really think that most of us have a true understanding of our memories, because we all see things. You could put 5 people in the same room having an event, and not everybody's going to give you the same story, and then nobody remembers it the same way. So that memory, so the feeling of home part is making the memories become more at home with you, rather than feeling uncomfortable with those memories, especially if you've been traumatized. And, that's a whole nother ball game. And then holding a part of me physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually, however you want to look at it. I might be alone, but that doesn't mean I am alone. Like especially when you know or understand or feel a higher power or something bigger than you, a source, energy, whatever you want to call it, God, dare I say, Allah, whatever you want to call it, there's just something bigger than us. So we aren't really ever alone. And when we love ourselves, that big energy actually comes inside of us, or is inside of us. I'm still working on that myself. And you begin to not feel alone. I'm still working through that kind of thing to understand that, to connect with it, but I know it's there. So that's kind of where mine is on that one.
Yeah. No, that's right on. Under the loneliness, because loneliness is a perception. It's not a reality. However, when it feels that way, it's our reality, because it's our feeling. But it's a perception, because you're right. Alone is solitary. Loneliness, I could be lonely by myself, or in the middle with another person in the same bed, or with 40,000 people at a concert or something. You know what I mean? It's still. Loneliness is a state of mind. But under the loneliness, right at the soul level, the highest self, there lies the comfort, true love at its own, the reality of what true love is. Making the memories, the feeling of home, which is coming back home to that part of us. And so the memories are, whatever they were, they served whatever they did, good, bad, and the like. Holding a part of me that's never alone, back to that soul level. Which is really, again, and then we go back to the last line that I end up singing as "My heart feels full," as you sing, holding the moment, growing in love, loving, longing to hold you. My heart feels full, because that's really what it's about. It's opening our heart, and then it feels filled with the light of love, which is already within us. And then once it's that, it can be shared with another. And in that sharing of the other, that is the quote unquote true love, going outward.
And that's the overflow. I think we used overflow as a word in one of the other songs too that we've written. And overflow, filled with love and truth and peace and joy and light and all that stuff. And it's obvious. Again, I said this earlier. I think I said at the beginning of this. It's like you're a lighthouse. That light just comes out of you, and people are drawn to that. And they're like, whoa, you don't have to tell them anything. You don't have to do anything. They're just drawn to you, and they just want to be with you. They feel your energy. It's not something you have to do. It's something you have to make happen. It's just something that is. And it's just so freaking powerful when you're in that space. And we get fleeting moments of it. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes when we're still traveling through this road of healing, it's very fleeting, and they come back and they go and they come and they go. And then finally it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as your light expands and you become expansive. And it's all sharing that, your heart. It, like you said, your heart feels full, and then you get to share it with everybody else. And that's what I feel like this podcast is coming to. It's coming to that, with what we've gone through, with what we've experienced, with what we've surrendered to, with what we've healed from, or are in the process of healing from, whatever. The more we walk through this, even now, from what we experience, the more our hearts fill, and the more we are more compassionate for each other, for ourselves, for other people. And that's kind of where that comes into play, I think. So
absolutely, bringing the past, present, and moving into the next moment, which is the quote unquote future. So
right,
with that
which
said,
is also
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So all right, well, I love that song.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. It's a nice, loving, kind song, which has one of a kind in it. So next week we'll go on to the next one, which was also part of the EP, and I think it's but I won't say it, so it'll be a surprise.
Yeah, don't say it, because we got to figure it out.
But no, it's still off the EP, which, by the way, these songs are all on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube or all the others.
YouTube. These particular songs, the mastered ones, are on YouTube Music, but we also have our videos on our own Indivinity Music YouTube channel.
Right. But I mean, and then also Amazon. I mean, they're on all of the stuff. So I don't know. Some people listen to certain stuff, but
I think they're on like Deezer. I've never heard of Deezer until we started doing
Deezer. I mean, iHeart Music, iHeart Radio, whatever that is. So, but most people listen to one of the big ones. But feel free to listen, to comment, give feedback, to throw your opinions, feelings, energies into the room with us. And more than welcome. We'd appreciate it and welcome you to doing that. And with that, have a beautiful, wonderful, loving day with all kinds of experiences that open your heart today
and shape your world.
That's right.
And that hit me when you said that. I was like, to shape your world.
There you go. That's right.
So, all right. Well, thank you for being here at Growth Made Groovy.
That's right.
Podcast by Indivinity Productions. I've never said that before, so I just wanted to.
Good. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you next time.
Bye.